If AJ beats Klitschko, which I and the rest of Great Britain are hoping he does, anytime he is ready to do it, I am ready. I'd have fought him on my first fight back from retirement because I know I can beat him. Hopefully, if he wins, his team will have the confidence. David Haye is the biggest fight on the planet. Let's make it happen. The ball is in his court. So those are the words of the Haymaker, David Haye, talking about a potential fight with IBF heavyweight world champion Anthony Joshua. He has admitted several times that Joshua has taken his place as the most popular UK heavyweight, and he wants that spot back. David Haye loves the limelight. He also loves a pound note. So he's got lots of motivation to want to fight Anthony Joshua. As far as how the fight would play out, would he be able to beat Anthony Joshua? A lot of people believe so. A lot of people believe that Joshua is very stiff and robotic and still very green. And David Haye is explosive, fast, and a lot more fluid than Joshua is. They think, based on particularly fights like the Dillian Whyte fight, Joshua would be there for the taking by a guy like David Haye. But in the minds of boxing fans, you're only as good as your last fight. So what people think will happen in a Anthony Joshua David Haye fight will probably hinge on what takes place between David Haye and Tony Bellew and Anthony Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko. If Haye struggles with Tony Bellew and Joshua wipes the floor with Klitschko, there'll be very few people who believe that David Haye will stand much of a chance against Anthony Joshua. There'll be some picking him if the fight gets made, let's say, later on this year. But the majority of people will say, nah, look what Joshua did with Klitschko. They won't really be thinking about styles make fights. They won't care about that. They'll just think Klitschko beat Haye, Joshua destroyed Klitschko, so therefore Joshua destroys Haye. And maybe they'll be right. But styles make fights is definitely something that people should not overlook. But speaking about overlooking, is David Haye overlooking Tony Bellew? I personally think David Haye will beat Tony Bellew. I'm pretty confident about that. But if Tony Bellew were to spring the upset, it wouldn't be shocking to me in the slightest. Tony Bellew is a current cruiserweight world champion. This is not some cab driver they just picked out of the crowd. David Haye hasn't fought an opponent with a pulse in several years. When was the Derek Chisora fight? Was that 2012? That's like 5 years ago. So you can't expect David Haye, who hasn't fought anybody with a pulse in 5 years, to not have some rust at 36 years of age. You can't expect that. He has to have some deterioration. And with the extra muscle mass that he's added, are you trying to tell me that his stamina is going to be better than ever before? I don't buy it. I don't think his stamina will be better than ever before. I think he's going to struggle in the later rounds of a fight, particularly if there's any type of pace in that fight. Tony Bellew can come on strong late in fights. He scored knockouts and knockdowns late in fights. He's been fighting at a high level. He's been fighting frequently. David Haye hasn't. So if the upset was to happen, it wouldn't be a massive shock to me. I've spoken before about David Haye's style and compared it to Adonis Stevenson's style. Obviously, David Haye's taller. He's a cruiserweight. Stevenson's a light heavyweight. David Haye's orthodox. Stevenson is southpaw. But they have some similarities. They both like to sharpshoot and pot shot at long range. And Stevenson was able to deal with Tony Bellew with relative ease. But Tony Bellew was weight drained. He's much stronger at cruiserweight than he was at light heavyweight. And on top of that, Stevenson has a better work rate than David Haye. Stevenson has got vastly superior stamina to David Haye. He can throw a lot more punches than David Haye can. He might not hit as hard as Haye, not as big, not as strong, but he's technically better than Haye, I would say, Adonis Stevenson. He can fight on the inside. David Haye can't do that. And as I say, his work rate is a lot better than David Haye's. So there are pluses and minuses to Haye and Stevenson. You can't just say, oh, well, Stevenson did this, so that Haye's going to do exactly the same. You know, Stevenson has certain things that Haye don't have, and vice versa. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Haye and Tony Bellew. You know, if David Haye manages to smash him to pieces and get past Bellew, then would Eddie Hearn even put David Haye in with his prized possession, Anthony Joshua? I know he's put Joshua in with Klitschko right now, but there seems to be tension between David Haye and Eddie Hearn. And David Haye has just started his own promotional company, or maybe expanded his promotional company. Well, no, it's a new promotional company. Because before it was Haymaker Promotions, now it's Haymaker Ringstar. He's teamed up with Richard Schaefer. So he is promotionally now a rival of Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. And as I say, on a personal level, Haye and Eddie Hearn don't seem to like each other. So if Haye smashes Bellew to pieces, is Eddie gonna, and let's say Joshua gets past Klitschko, is Eddie Hearn gonna say, okay, let me give Joshua to David Haye? Maybe the money will be too much for Eddie Hearn to refuse, or perhaps Eddie Hearn will decide to go in a different direction first and maybe take David Haye on later down the line when Haye is even older and maybe a bit more shot worn. Maybe he will say, let's have Joshua versus Joseph Parker. Let's have Joshua versus, or, you know, the winner of Joseph Parker Fury. Let's have Joshua versus Deontay Wilder, so on and so forth. Maybe Fury will come back and Eddie Hearn will say, let's have Joshua Fury. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Which way is this situation going to go? Will Anthony Joshua and David Haye eventually fight in the ring? And if so, who do you think will win? Based on their styles, based on whatever you want to base it on. Drop it all in the comment section below. It's happening. I'm out.